journal citation reports to find your the impact of journals and potentially places to publish. We're going to also talk about Scopus, SciVal, and Scholars at UK. And if we have time, I'm also going to talk a little bit about browsing, which is one of our ways to access all our electronic journals that I want to make sure everybody's aware of. But before we start, I do want to point out that this is a very entry-level presentation. The purpose of this is to show how to use tools that already exist, the databases we already subscribe to, and use the tools they have built into them to harvest bibliometric information. So often we have people come to us with, they want to find really specific data points, and that often involves using R or some other programming language to actually build a program in order to harvest that data. This is not to that level of detail. Instead, we're going to show you what is already available to you, of course, like within databases like Web of Science and Scopus, with the caveat that none of them do a perfect job. They can all be immensely helpful and help you in many ways, but none of them are actually perfect, because if they were, then we wouldn't have this many ways of doing things. There would just be one solid way in order to harvest this bibliometric database, or the bibliometric information. So with that caveat, let's move ahead to Web of Science, which you may be very familiar with just in terms of your literature searching. So we're not going to focus on that. We are just going to focus on how to generate citation data for individual works or authors, and then also show you how you can find things like your H-index and other impacts through there. And then also, you may or may not be familiar with the fact that journal citation reports used to be a subset of Web of Science, and that is how you would find the impact factor of journals. That is no longer the case. So I'm going to walk you through finding, making sure you know how to find that outside of Web of Science, because it has now split. So I am going to, please bear with me as I stop sharing the PowerPoint and instead jump to, if it'll let me, jump to my web page. I'm going to show you how first to get into Web of Science really quickly. All right, is everybody seeing the Medical Center Library webpage? Okay, so when you're accessing any of these tools at all, please make sure that you are accessing them through UK's webpage, because they're all behind paywalls. You won't be able to access them otherwise. Honestly, the easiest way to do this is to just Google MCL Medical, which stands for Medical Center Library UKY, and it is the first thing that comes up. Bookmark that site and you will always be here. And you can click Health Science Databases, and the biggies are always going to be listed under here. And you can see that we have Web of Science and Scopus already listed under here, which are the two that I'm going to cover. If you need to access our many other databases, even outside of health sciences, then you can just go back to the top, click databases, and then navigate your way to the whole A to Z list of all the hundreds upon hundreds of databases provided by UK libraries. But for the purpose of this, we are going to focus on the 4 resources that I mentioned earlier. So first, if you go into Web of Science, they make it really easy to find your basic citation information regarding bibliometrics. You can search for any topic, and you'll already have citation information about not only access to all the references included in the article, but how often it's been cited, built into the results. And if you click into an article, you can see that this actually expands out quite drastically, and it tells you how many times it's been cited in all databases and exactly where. And you can click all these links to get more information. Citing items by classification, it just expands the level of detail down the further you go into the information, the bibliometric information about this specific article and citation. If you want to find something about a specific author, you can either just search by the author name, the same way that I just put in all fields liver disease. You can change it to the author and search it that way. Or if you have an article open, you can simply click on their name and it'll take you to that author's page that includes their profile summary, H-index, total publications, so on and so forth. So it's very important that if this is you, that you should find yourself and you should claim your record. And the purpose of that is that you can change your published names. So if you sometimes publish under your last name and then your first initial and second initial, or sometimes your last name and then your full first name and then a middle initial, depending on what the journal requires, you need to make sure that all the different names are listed for you so your information is fully being collected and it doesn't think that, in my case, Morgan, Rebecca J is different from Morgan, RJ. Also, if you have a relatively common name, you need to make sure that you can distinguish between you and other people that have similar or the same names. And you can only do that if you can claim your record and start going through and fixing some of this, such as where you've published from, what schools, organizations, corporations you've been affiliated with. And then also the subject categories that you publish under. All this information will help make this information much more accurate. And so if you are indexed in Web of Science and you've published already, please make sure that you claim your record and you start cultivating this information, because it will make much more accurate bibliometric outputs for you. The one caveat I would say with this for things like H-index is that it's fairly common that everything you've published has not been indexed into Web of Science. And that's because there's no database in the world that absolutely indexes every single journal that has ever been created. They're selective with what they bring in. And depending on your discipline, it might fall into the inclusion metrics for Web of Science, it might not. And if all your stuff isn't included in Web of Science, well, then your H-index is going to be wrong because it's not going to be including every single thing factored in there. So that's a caveat. Definitely check before you use any of these numbers that all your publications are in there, that there aren't publications that are being falsely attributed to you because of similar names, things like that. And again, that's just another reason it's so important to claim your record so you can fix some of this stuff if it's wrong. But moving on, it is important to know that there are about 1,000 clickable links throughout Web of Science, and it is important to click all of them because things will expand out much bigger than you realize. In addition to just this information shared on the basic author citation page, you can view a full citation report that goes vastly more in depth about what has actually been published, years, average of citations per year, so on and so forth. And you can keep clicking into more things and analyze it further. You can change and decide, oh, I only want to look at the most recent year or two and get my H-index based off that. So you can really manipulate this to output the data you actually want. I mean, case in point, you wouldn't think this name's already here that I would need to hit analyze results. The results would already be analyzed, but lo and behold, I click on it and it's a completely different interface than what we saw before, giving, different overviews of what we saw previously. And you can display it in multiple different ways based on what you are choosing to look at. So based on titles, based on publication years, based on micro citation topics, it gets pretty in depth. And so really make sure that you go through and look at all the different possible ways that you can analyze your results if you really want to get an in-depth look at what you yourself have published, what your colleagues have published, or any other author that you're interested in looking at their results has published. There's just a lot of layers to these different reports where you can find a lot more information. So that's really the very quick and dirty looking at author and article citation information. Now let's look at journal citation information within what used to be Web of Science and is now journal citation reports. We're actually going to go completely out of Web of Science It'll let me just backtrack. That would be the easiest thing. It might not. Let's just get back to Medical Center Library page. And instead of, like I said, this being in Web of Science, you actually have to go back into health science databases. And then you'll notice that there's no journal citation reports listed under these quick links. And so what you have to do is you have to click up here. It might be a little hard to see. You have to click on databases and then A to Z list of databases. Click J and navigate to journal citation reports. Or you can just bookmark this link and you won't have to keep doing that if you know it's something you're going to be looking at again and again. And this is immensely simple. It's basically, this used to be a search that was available within Web of Science, and now it's just kind of been pulled out as its own separate thing. So Clarivate can sell it as a separate product to make more money. That's literally the only reason this has happened. And you can search specifically by journal names or ISSN, which are the individual identifiers for each periodical in the United States. Or you can also search by category or publication or publisher. So there's a whole variety of ways you can learn, but the gist is the same for everything. And basically, if I want to look up any journal, you can start putting the name in, select the one you want, and you will get the full citation or the full breakdown of the journal's performance and impact factor, including broken down without self-citation. So people who are citing themselves over and over again, that can, inflate impact factor. So it calculates that out for you. And also, similar to Web of Science, these interactive charts that you can manipulate yourself. And you can even view the calculations and everything that was done before, which is pretty cool. And this just keeps going down. And each one of these you can export into a separate PDF file that reports out what you are actually interested in. So if you need to make a report to your department, or if you're looking for a journal to publish in and you're trying to determine, okay, what is the impact factor? What has been published in this before? You can really manipulate all of these to see, oh, okay, this is publishing on a topic I'm interested in. Maybe colleagues have published in here. You can find all of that through this website and the information provided here. And it really does go quite in depth. And if you're just simply interested in a topic, you can also work your way down and find areas that it fell into, like where does it line up with other categories, and then search those categories and then find other journals on similar topics. So this is, as I said, and here, as I was saying before, here's a bunch of different related journals that you can then look into. If this is one that you want to find others that you could potentially publish in, that's another way to do it. So as you can see, this just keeps going on and on and on. So this is a very in-depth report related to individual journals, and there are thousands upon thousands of journals in here. As long as it is not a brand new journal that has been published started new in like the last 2 years, and it's fairly established, you should be able to find it in here. But the thing to always be aware of with a lot of this data, we get a lot of departments, like the College of Pharmacy is always like, I want to see our citation information ASAP. I want to know exactly how we did in these past few months. It's not available. It takes a while for this information to be loaded. And you'll notice that at least in the Journal of Pain and in most of the other ones that I've looked in recently, the most recent year is only 2021, because this is a lot of information. And it takes a while to, collate all the citations that have been done for each article, to take out the self-citations and actually create this thorough report. So you're always looking backwards to a certain degree when you are looking at full journal impact data. So always be aware of that. You're almost never going to find accurate information that is just in the past few months, because obviously it takes a while for for stuff to be written and then cited, and then to have the citations published and so on and so forth, and then have their impact determined. So when you're looking at journal impact and author impact to a certain degree, always be prepared that it's going to be a minimum of a year behind. And then usually in July is when it updates and moves to the previous year. So it's currently 2021, because in July or the very end of June of 2023, it'll then jump to the 2022 information. So there's about a 6-month lag for a full year of data. So always make sure you keep that in mind. All right. Let's move back to our presentation really quickly. That's just covering a little bit what I already talked about with Web of Science. And we will share, I'm not going to cover every slide that I have in here because we will share the PowerPoints with you, and we more included that to make sure that what we are actually demonstrating live is captured. But I'm mainly going to work off of live presentation for when I'm demonstrating these. So now let's talk about Scopus, which is a product of Elsevier. Scopus is interesting. It does very similar things to Web of Science, like it generates author information. But the big difference between Web of Science and Scopus that I've found is that it fairly accurately gets affiliation data, and you can generate information for a full affiliation. So you can do it by authors, you can do it by researcher, which is also interesting, and I'll point that out. But affiliation is a big one because often, you know, certain departments like a subset of one of our colleges, or the School of Medicine even, or the College of Pharmacy, they will want to know everything that has happened in their school in a certain amount of time so they can report it either to, you know, keep getting grant funding to keep certain accreditation levels up for you know, for their schools. And this is how you basically generate it, through the affiliations section, without having to track it manually and do all that information on your own. So let's jump to Scopus. And once again, I am going through our Health Science Databases page, because if I scroll down, Scopus is one of them that is included here. And just like Web of Science, maybe you're familiar with Scopus in terms of just searching for citations. Both Web of Science and Scopus are also, you know, bibliometric databases where you can find actual, you know, research and actual articles, links to actual articles for research, but you can also generate this bibliometric information. So in addition to searching for documents, which is how you would actually find your citations, you can search directly for authors. And then different from searching directly from authors is this researcher discovery search, which the nuance of that is that if you're searching for an author, you're searching for a known author. You're searching for your name. You're searching for a colleague's name. You're searching for someone in the field that you know is a benchmark researcher and you want to find their work. Researcher discovery is interesting because you're actually going to search for a topic and then find researchers that work in it. So it's a way to kind of find maybe potential people to collaborate with, or authors on a certain subject that you would normally maybe not know the name of, and instead you'd be able to discover them this way, if that makes sense. Caveat, this, as you can see right above where it says research discovery, this is still very much a pilot, so it's still being tested. It is not fully launched, so how accurate it is not yet determined. It's obviously doing well enough that they're advertising it as an option. You know, it's here, it's available, it's searchable. But if you look in your field that you're an absolute expert for and you see some weird things, just be aware this is still a pilot. Use it knowing that it is still being beta tested, and work with it with that caveat. But basically, if I'm interested in machine learning, let's say, and I search for that, and you can get much more specific than that. I mean, I'm just using a broad example. It will provide direct links to authors based on the number of matching documents within the Scopus database related to that subject matter, and their H-index, how strongly they've been cited, the total number of citations, the total number of documents, and you can make some decisions on there based on their expertise. And of course, you can also click directly into their profile and find more information, generate reports similar to what we saw in Web of Science, and look at their author citation report. You can, of course, also, going back to the main page, search for yourself and generate your own citation information report. Similar, it's almost identical to Web of Science by searching under author. Again, you'd be entering first name, last name, add affiliation. So it would have to be a known person. And then the difference with research or discovery is that you would be finding unknown people based on their area of research. So that's interesting. And then affiliations, as I mentioned, is the other big thing with Scopus that you can't really do as easily in other databases. At least you definitely can't in Web of Science. So simply search for an organization, and you can see it does break down. It could be Chandler Hospital, it could be the College of Medicine. I'm just going to search for the University of Kentucky initially. And then you can see the breakdown of at least what's in Scopus. Remember, this is only analyzing data of information that is found in Scopus, so it might not include everything ever done by the University of Kentucky, even ever done by these departments. So you're only working with the knowledge that is captured by this database, but it provides a fairly detailed breakdown of everything, all the different topics it's published in, all the different disciplines. And you can also click directly into collaborating affiliations and then break down, like, let's say you're part of the College of Public Health and you want to see everything just for the College of Public Health. And then you get these more nuanced breakdowns, and you can go down a few levels. One issue we've run in with this a few times is that depending on how the information is inputted, similar to authors' names, in each journal, how it's published, if someone says University of Kentucky College of Public Health, that's one way of writing it. If it's College of Public Health, University of Kentucky, doesn't seem like it would be a big difference. But remember, this is a search algorithm that is pulling this information. It would need to recognize that they're identical things. And sometimes even if we can look and see that, like, UK Public Health is University of Kentucky Public Health, this might not recognize it. And so you can contact Scopus. Someone in your department or college can contact Scopus, get access to affiliation details, and clean it up to make sure that it is in fact capturing everything correctly based on how affiliations have been written or published in each journal. Because there are many times that they're sometimes left out and or not listed in an identical way that is ultimately picked up by the search algorithm. So names are important. So you really, just similar to the Web of Science author record that you want to have control of, so you can make sure all the different ways your names are spelled. I urge you to get people into your department to take control of this record and make sure that it is harvesting everything you need. And you can go directly through Scopus in order to do that. And again, so many of these are linkable. You can just keep clicking into them and expanding all into different ways to visualize and see this information. I highly recommend that you take the time and just explore everything that is offered within these reports that I can't necessarily show in great detail each time. But that basically covers everything in Scopus. Before I hand control over to Kayla for our next two resources, does anybody have any immediate questions that I can address? All right, and we will have time for questions at the end. So Kayla, please, I'll stop sharing. Take it away.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes, and which is perfect because SciVal, as you'll see in a second, is not working. It doesn't work super great off campus. So if you are off campus and you find that you're not able to get into SciVal, that's probably why. But I took screenshots in preparation of this exact moment. So the next two resources we're going to talk about are also owned by Elsevier, and Becky did a really, really great coverage of Scopus. So we'll just do a pretty light overview of these next couple resources, and then we'll answer any questions for the last about 5-ish minutes. So let's start. SciVal has 4 main sections. So the ones that we're going to talk about today are overview and benchmarking. There's also collaboration and trends, I believe, but kind of like the other bibliometric tools we've shown you, you can claim your own profile, and we would highly recommend you do that. And actually, if you claim your profile in Scopus, it will automatically connect to SciVal, which is really exciting. All of these tools are owned by Elsevier, so they are interconnected, which has pros and cons. So this tool allows you to kind of look at your individual metrics, but also is pretty heavy on like benchmarking metrics and collaborative metrics. So there are some preloaded groups already in here, which I'll show you in a second, but it makes it easy to analyze. Okay, so actually, I'm not going to be able to show you those preloaded groups. So if you select the overview tab, on the left-hand side, you're going to get a menu, and it's going to say things like researchers, institution, groups, and the University of Kentucky via, I believe, Scholars at UK, which is another tool that we subscribe to owned by Elsevier, which I'm going to talk about in a second, has these preloaded groups designated by department. So there's Markey Cancer Center, College of Public Health, College of Medicine, groups like that. So they've preloaded those. However, I find that if you want the most current data, the last time they updated those groups was March 2022. So naturally, there will have been some new faculty who have left, things like that, and even new publications. So if you're using these groups, you have to take it with a grain of salt. They're going to be a little bit outdated. You are able to create your own. So I wish I could show you, but I cannot. So we will keep going. One of the things that you can do is if you pre-select a group, in this instance, I believe I selected the Markey Cancer Center group. So I selected that. It showed the number of citations that they have, the number of authors, and you can look at a few different metrics here. So one of the visualizations that they've created is output and top 10% citation percentiles, publication top 10% journal percentiles, and then even publication share by subject area. So naturally, the Markey Cancer Center would have mostly publications in medicine and biochemistry, which makes a ton of sense. And then you can also look at publication sets. So embedded within SciVal, you can look at the overview and the data visualizations of that overview, but you can also kind of dig into their publication sets. The years are slightly strange. So you can go from 2012 to 2022, or like 2019 to 2022. So I typically will do either 2019 to 2022 or 2012 to 2022. There's a few other ones mixed in there. And the only way to kind of narrow that down by even more years, so if you wanted to look at the last like 2 years instead of the last 3 or even 10, you would actually have to go into the publication set, which I think is really interesting. So you can see here you have specific authors, institutions down here. So naturally, University of Kentucky will be the primary one because we're working within the University of Kentucky Markey group. But you can also see other people's affiliations and who has collaborated with researchers in the Markey Cancer Center. And then on the bottom left down here, you can see the publication years. So the way that the years work is really interesting. I don't quite understand why they've chosen these years, but If you only wanted to look at the past 2 years, you're not going to be able to select that in the main menu. You actually have to go into this publication set, which once again, not going to explain why because I have no idea. Okay, so I'm so sorry about SciVal not working. I tried all morning to get it to work. If you all have any questions about that, you can email us later and I can kind of dig in a little bit with that later. But now we're going to talk about Scholars at UK, and that actually is working. So I don't know why I shut that down a little early, but let me show you this. Once again, another tool owned by Elsevier. It's owned by Elsevier. It's called Pure, I believe. So Pure is like a subset of Elsevier. So it's all basically the same thing. Once again, Scholars at UK actually gets their data from Scopus. So Becky had, like I said, a really great overview, and it might just be easier to use Scopus because that's where all of this data is coming from anyway. So here is the main page. You can look at research units, which are the groups I discussed in SciVal, individual researchers, grants, contracts, output, facilities, and equipment. This once again has an emphasis on collaboration, but even more so than SciVal. So the researcher profiles is really interesting. I have a typo. The thing about this is I used my own profile, but you can obviously use yours or look at other people's. And this is really cool. This is called the Research Network. So it connects you to your co-authors and then people who have worked with your co-authors. So let me move this. Over here, you can see, actually, I chose this because Becky is right here. But we have worked on a few things together. Up here is my publication that I did with someone outside of my network. So they don't have a pure profile, which goes to show that there are quite a few limitations on all of these tools. My co-author is not even listed in this research network because she would not be a part of the Scopus pure profiles. But you can see that here's my home, it's libraries, and then here's presentation I did, here's a couple articles that we've all worked on, and then here are my co-authors. So it's a really cool way to see kind of like the connections between you and other researchers and help you find people to work with. Naturally, my network is pretty small because I haven't gotten the chance to publish too much, but it's a really cool tool. And then here's some research unit metrics. So I chose UK libraries as a whole just to look at to show kind of the emphasis on like research networks and collaboration. So one of the things you can see here is they have this fingerprint section, which shows kind of like the main topics that people in that department are publishing on. Naturally, the librarians are publishing quite a bit of information on libraries themselves, but you also have information literacy, student programming, research, and even university services itself. And then there's the sustainable development goals. So it tells you which ones your researchers are meeting. I can't super read that, but number 5 is gender equality. So you can see that librarians have been publishing on gender equality. And then on the far right, once again, you have that network. It's obviously a map of the world. So it shows you kind of where those collaborators are who have worked with the librarians at UK. I believe that is the PowerPoint. So let's actually dig into this. Do you have something to say, Becky? No, you're just here. Beautiful. Okay, so here is Scholars at UK once again. If you scroll all the way down, you can see that it's Pure by Scopus and Elsevier and blah, 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 more Elsevier. And here is kind of a broad overview of what UK is doing. So naturally, in all of the departments at UK, they're meeting the 17 sustainable development goals in research because we have a breadth of researchers here. So here are our top research areas from the last 5 years. So naturally, we're publishing mostly in the United States, but you can see that we've worked with people in, I believe, well, actually this is Hawaii. So this is interesting. Not entirely sure what that is, what country that is, but it looks Very cool. So here's Hawaii, once again, United States, working with people in Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia. So you can see that researchers at UK are working all over the world with different collaborators. The thing about this is that unlike Scopus and SciVal, you cannot edit any part of Scholars at UK. So if we just click here, well, I did not want to do that broad. So go research units and then click the caret down. We'll do provost. There we go. So you look at the College of Medicine. You can see that they're meeting quite a bit of the Sustainable Development Goals. A lot of research done on patients specifically. This, here we go. So this is a ton of collaborations that we've been doing. And then here are even more research units. So if you wanted to look at anesthesiology specifically, here is that. Now, the problem here is that if you have researchers who have moved on or researchers who are maybe potentially adjunct and you want to look at, full-time FTE faculty, there is absolutely no way you're going to be able to edit this. And a lot of the information can be wrong. So sometimes if you want to split things up into like staff research, staff publications, and faculty publications, you're just not going to be able to do that in Scholars at UK. It is not that kind of powerful tool. It's mostly for you to kind of upload your own research and to see, who you've been collaborating with and who people in your department have been collaborating with. On the left-hand side here, you have the Sustainable Development Goals. So if you wanted to look at people doing research on affordable and clean energy, you can do that. You can look at their concepts. So a datum concept, people who are working on data. Very interesting. The research units. And then you can even go by like the last time someone has published. So if someone's published in the last 5 years, they would show up on here. The advanced search is a little bit interesting. So you can look at, people who have done grants on, we'll do clean energy. So if people have done any work in clean energy, you can see that, well, there's the research units for applied energy, but Dr. Yang has done research in clean energy as well. So it's searchable. It is not customizable. And that, I believe, is mostly how to use these tools. Once again, that all of that data comes from Scopus. So you may just want to go straight to the source and look at Scopus data, but each tool kind of has its own hallmark, its own thing that it does really well. So, each of these tools, depending on what your needs are, you may want to use one or the other, but that's the presentation. We have about 4 minutes left. Becky?
If it's okay, and if anybody has any pressing questions, we can go to those first. But if we have some time left, I would like to at least demonstrate browsing very quickly, if we have a moment. The thing about browsing, if you're not familiar with it, it's a very, very interesting tool that allows you to browse all of the resources that or all the journals that we provide. Oh, you have a question before I move into browsing?
Yes, I have some questions.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, I have several. So
sure.
Thank you very much for presentations. It's very useful for me.
Okay.
I'm actually a new employee at the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. Okay. So I hope that everything you have shown for medicine will work for engineering also.
It should in the databases we used, because they're not medically focused. It's not like PubMed. Web of Science is also, physics and material sciences.
You have just started to show this library of medicine. Therefore, I just thought so maybe.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay. Yes, I just thought.
We're from the medical library, so you can access stuff that way. honestly, where I had said like bookmark just the, you know, the MCL website, you don't have to do that. If you go to where it says A to Z databases or all databases, that probably makes a lot more sense
I see.
for you and your department. And we can
Okay.
send the link to that with the resources that we send after this. So
Oh,
you'll have the
sure.
link to the full
Yes,
list.
I just was a little bit, you know, confused.
No, sorry
And
about that.
yes, as Kyla said, we cannot work with something from the home, yes, but with something we can work from home.
Everything
Yes.
but SciVal should work fine
Yes.
remotely. As long
SciVal does not work very well from a home computer. It doesn't matter how you log in. We're currently working on the electronic resources is currently working on new login systems, like new tools to log in, but that's going to be a few months. So at this point, accessing SciVal from home is probably not going to happen, but every other tool works from home. SciVal is just, we just got it in the last couple of years. And I believe it's owned by the Office of Research, maybe?
I think so.
So
Okay.
we're not in charge of like how that works. We just access it. So
Okay, sure.
everything.
I just need my link blue ID and
Yes.
password. Yes. Okay.
Yes. And when I just clicked the link and it took me right to the database, it's because I'm in my office. It would come up with the link blue login if you're at home.
I see. And Rebecca, you have shown this Web of Science and this option claim my record.
Yes.
And you know, I have published several publications in different language, not in English only.